Well, I'm getting ready for the day. I'm talking to myself. The audio was so poor, I've turned it off and I'm going to narrate what's going on here. I'm only half joking when I'm saying I'm talking to myself. I've been somewhat in limbo about what to do. Everything stopped, of course, when the hurricane came through, but that's no excuse because it only took me about a half a day to clean up from the mess that the hurricane caused. But I guess the main thing is that the person I was making the plant pot tree for didn't care for the looks of what I'd done so far, so at any rate, it's made of scrap. I'm going to continue it in the hopes that maybe when it's finished she'll like it. If not, it's scrap. I'll cut it up and use it somewhere else. So you can see my workshop environment. One of my biggest challenges, of course, is very limited space, and the fact that in my neighborhood they have strict rules about what can be seen from the street. That's the reason I created that angle iron frame barrier with lattice work. And the other rule I have to comply with is everything has to be covered unless I'm out there working on it. And that's a pain. This video I started after I'd already cleaned up a little bit and removed the covers. And there is the tree. It's made out of angle iron. No, scratch that. It's made out of chain, a little bit of rebar, and some other scraps. The idea is that it's to hold potted plants, and it needs to be designed in such a way as they can all get sunlight. Now these potted plants are going to be quite heavy, so I'm using 1/4 inch chain, that is in thickness 1/4 inches, and if it's welded up it should be strong enough. The stake will go 4 feet into the ground, and I'm going to add some vanes on that to help provide some stability. Wherever it's put, it will not be cemented in, so with no concrete to hold it steady, I have to depend on how deep it goes into the ground. In the way of equipment, I have 3 welding machines. What you see in the foreground is a titanium flux wire 110 volt welder. Behind it, which you can't see, is a stick welder running on 220, a cheap inverter welder, but it works great. Also, what you cannot see is a DC generator unit, gasoline powered, of course, which has enough, I think it's 200, more than 200 amps, so it's, but the trouble is, unless I'm running, creating a battleship or something really heavy, it's overkill, and also it makes a lot of noise, which doesn't go over well in my neighborhood. The primary reason I bought the flux core wire welder was to tack stuff together, particularly in terms of metal art, where I'm holding a lot of things by hand on the larger pieces. But I must say, on this project, since I'm using 1/4-inch chain, it's just not up to the task. As you'll see in the video, I spent a lot of time trying to make it work, but in addition to being time consuming, because stuff would break off, but trying to make it work, it just didn't work out well. So I switched to my stick welder, and I had a box of 6011 rods, which I wanted to get rid of because that's a very hot, deep penetrating rod, and on most of the stuff I do, it just burns through too easily. But anyway, when I started this, when I switched to stick welding on this project, I learned one thing about the 6011 is that if you're tacking, man, the tacks are just super quick. It penetrates right through, so you don't have to screw around with a wire welder. Now, I'm sure if I had a more powerful wire welder, that would be a whole different story. So now the cheap flux wire 110 volt unit that I have there, I'm only going to use for tacking together lightweight stuff, particularly sheet metal. And for that, it's fine. It's worth the investment. But as I get better with stick welding, which is what I used to do 50 years ago, I must say I'm getting to like it better. So I've switched to the stick welder, and it's just doing a fine job. And remember, since this is going to be holding up potted plants, the things that are going to be hung on it are quite heavy. So the links of the chain are going to have to be welded up solid to hold that kind of weight. So I would be at it forever using the wire welder. Hey, why isn't it sparking? Oh, you have to turn the welding machine on. Oh, it works better that way. A little power on the job. And not having sufficient space or a big enough table to lay things out nicely is a real handicap. If it was fabrication where I had to worry about square and plumb, I do have some holders that I can use in conjunction with my table to give me the size I need. It takes a hell of a lot of time to set it up, but it does work. In this case, I'm just a juggler, holding the stinger in one hand and the piece I'm trying to tack together in the other, and none of it clamped down makes it a challenge to get a arc started without sticking. But with a little patience, it can be done. And as I said, that's 6011 rod, just once you get an arc going, it creates a strong tack just in seconds. In fact, when I first started this tacking, I was actually going a little too long, and it was getting beyond the tack. But it was just realizing how much penetration it was. My fear before, as I stated earlier, was that when I'd used it on other things, even 1/8 of an inch angle iron, it'd burn through in a heartbeat. So it was really hard to control in that regard. But here, it just worked out excellent. Therefore, I'm not going to burn through all my rods on tasks that they're not suited for. I'm going to hang on to some when I have to tack other heavy gauge stuff. You can see the challenge of trying to stick well when everything's moving around. But fortunately, as I said, just a few seconds and this tack together. So this thing's becoming more stiff as I'm, oops, I spoke too soon, didn't I? Okay, I'm doing a little bit more than tacking here. In order, the branch of the tree is getting so long and heavy that I'm actually having to weld it up pretty good to keep it anywhere near stable. And as I'll find out later, I had a weak link further up which I needed to weld up to keep it from moving. Where did I lay this stinger down? Everything's so grounded, so I guess the ground's a good place to lay it. As you can see here, I switched back to the flux wire welder. It doesn't take me long to switch back to the stick welder. Just on heavy stuff, it's just not effective. Plus, if you got anything moving like this, while it is easy to start an arc, you waste a lot of wire. So here I go back to the old stick. The leather foot covering worked very well. Unfortunately, one of the other hazards with wearing sandals in a metal shop is I ended up stubbing my toe on a sharp piece of angle iron. So it would have been worth putting on the boots for. I don't know. Maybe you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I don't know. If I beat my feet up enough, maybe I'll learn. Although it may take a hammer upside the head to teach me to be safer. I've got a respirator, which I rarely ever wear. I should. I guess at my age, you figure what the heck. And after all, I smoked 30 years, so if that didn't kill me, maybe a little welding fumes won't. I know, that's stupid. You'll see that I'm shaking the stinger quite a bit because the flux on that 6011 rod flames up. I think it's a cellulose-based flux, which is one reason it's so aggressive on the burn, but it'll catch on fire and burn after you've broken the arc. I'm beyond tacking now. I'm basically welding up the link joints to give it the stiffness it needs and the strength to hold up heavy flower pots. So here again, the 6011 is working great for that. I mean, it's going right through two 1/4-inch diameter metal without any problem at all. At the time this was shot, it was about 75 degrees, which is really nice weather in Central Florida. Before the hurricane blew in fall, at this time of day it would be low 90s. And I just can't work in that kind of heat. Possibly a younger man could, but not me now. So I'm trying to start shaping the branch, but in so doing, that's when I realized one of the links that was tacked wasn't going to hold up. So I had done it previously with flux wire, so now I'm going to do it with a real deal. So now to do a little more shaping. This is like an overgrown bonsai tree. No, not really, but at any rate, I'm trying to lock this in my vise, which is difficult because it's not like angle iron or round stock or whatever. It's an irregular surface, so the vise has a difficult time holding it well. Oops. There it goes. Oh. See, this is what I call fun. Please don't try to commit me. I've long since gotten beyond the point where a sanity test would be useful. Well, I'm trying to bend this branch, but my welding was too strong. So when all else fails, just get out the old cutting wheel, take it apart and glue it back together. Oh me. Fun. You know, I've got a plasma cutter and I've got a portable bandsaw, but I find myself using the hand, the angle cutter a whole lot more than I thought I would. The main thing, it doesn't have to be set up like the plasma cutter. It works on any kind of surface, unlike the bandsaw, and it's just handy. Moreover, in the quantity I'm buying cutoff wheels, they run me about 40 cents a piece, and I can get a lot of cutting and grinding done with that, so it's very cost effective. It makes a bit of noise, but not too bad, and I can cut through stuff pretty quick, so it's not like I'm having to disrupt the entire neighborhood. On big cuts, I would use the laser cutter, but it's loud, which was something I didn't realize when I first bought it. It's loud. It's like hearing a jet engine going. So given my neighborhood restrictions, I try to keep the noise down, and the thing's pretty much invisible to my neighbors. So there you go. I changed the shape of that. I think I'll just cut it off and reposition it. Well, that's the beauty part about sculptures with metal. If you don't like what you want, you can partially disassemble it and try again. You couldn't do that as a sculpture with stone, for example. Well, it's time to take a break and cool off a little bit. So I'll go inside where it's air conditioned for a while.